Today we have past presenters presenting on what they have done in terms of finding alternatives to traditional textbooks. And we're going to have our first presenter, Brian Belet, who's going to introduce himself. And then we have a virtual presenter also that we're going to show you a video after he's done. So Brian, it's all yours.
Well, I'm going to sit, as you can see myself there, provided my Wi-Fi pen works. We'll see, right? So I'm Brian Belet. I'm a professor in music, and I've been here on campus since 1994. So enjoyed being here. One of the proverbial problems we've had is with textbooks. And so this program, when I was involved, which was in 2013, was TAP, and Textbook Alternative Program. And so that's, which has now become the team. So my presentation is based on what I did, and so it's a different focus in detail than what the current program is, but there are some, still some similarities. One of the things is, we'll go to that, when I received my grant in the fall of 2013, and the purpose for that was to create an alternative text for this basic core course that all music majors take. Actually, we have a 4-semester core, music 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's the freshman and sophomore year that's required of all majors. And that's in music theory, this, internal structures of music, which I not only teach, but I oversee. There's 4 of us who teach that and other courses, so I oversee that whole area as well. The primary goal was to reduce the price of the text in the program in those days. It was to be, the plan was, this being a 2013 grant, was to be implemented the next year. I was on sabbatical then, so I didn't implement it until fall 2015, but that's okay. The existing old text is one of these things that's been one of my complaints for many years. It's certainly in my field, and I don't know how it translates to other fields. There's been this growing trend of making comprehensive packages, not just a text. And at one level, it kind of grates me. It's like, where's the professor come in? They're trying to have this fully integrated thing that a student would probably live through on their own. This particular book, which was the most recent one I used, is probably one of the theory books in music that I disliked the least, which is why, you know what I'm saying? Which is why I would adopt it. The text itself is $200. It comes with a workbook that's $120, no music score anthology, I'll come back to that in a minute, and a companion audio CD set for $88. If we buy the entire packet, that's $400. That's a lot of cash, right? I think. So it was one thing we wanted to address. As it is, my colleagues and I who were using this text pretty much only use the text anyway. But it's still $200. It's almost 700 pages long. It was designed to be used for multiple semesters so you can kind of amortize the price. However, we would use it for the first semester, 1A, also for its companion, the next course too, but then really not after that. So it really only has 2 semesters of real value. So that's still expensive. But in typical of these texts like this, in this particular one, not only were there areas we wouldn't use for one thing, but like that middle unwanted tangents. It goes off to almost 45 pages of other stuff that's not germane to any of the courses. So students have bought this text and say, well, just ignore that. Mainly because we have other courses that address that. It's just superfluous. And then for the 3rd and 4th semester, we never used it anyway. None of the texts on the market address those more complex issues, advanced issues well. So as long as the students had the book and spent the money, we'd sort of put it in our syllabus, still have the book, but it's for reference, and we never opened the book once. So that was the existing problem. The new text I did, my goal was to be save money, $12.
Wow.
Short, sweet, and to the point, but basically an outline of topics and key points, assuming that the instructor did the job, actually did this, that you don't need the text that spends 50 pages talking about something when that's what the instructor talks about. What you just need is the key points. And so I designed a text to do just that, very inexpensive. And when the students buy it, it's both, they get a paper copy and they automatically have an e-version. A quick tangent to this, I've done for many years, and I think all of my colleagues do. I maintain a website for all of my courses. So in addition to all of this, there are audio examples, score examples, links to other things out there that I update weekly, if you will, certainly semester, but I update all the time. And so again, some of these full packets that try to do that, we do it already ourselves. We don't need more of that stuff. So if the key outline or the key concept for this project was to reduce the price, even looking at the text from $200 to $12, we accomplished that in a hurry. So that was fine. It's kind of small there, but I have the copy here if anyone wants to see it. The table of contents does address the key issues that someone in the first 2 semesters of music theory needs, with some examples. And I have like just one page further on of one way the pages look. This is some like page 30 something. It's later in the text. A key issue that many music students have is this issue of, in a voice leading context, dealing with what's called the augmented second, A2, which is to be avoided. And this shows an example. Here's how it shows up, and here's how you avoid it. And of course, in class, we spend lots of time with that. But and here's one example for someone, what was that notes? What did we talk about? Well, here's how it looks, and here's how I should avoid it. And again, the companion text will have 20 pages of this. You just need one. That was to make it smaller. So there's plenty of technical detail when we need it, as well as some big overview. And then I have a preface in there for the students of, again, my rant against these big all-inclusive texts that we don't need, that I think the instructor should be actually the one doing the teaching. Right? So on and on and on. One thing in all these projects are unexpected developments. My unexpected development was a great deal of pushback from my department chair. Now, when I applied for the grant and received the grant in 2013, we were doing a chair search. So this happened while I was in the middle of it, and I was very, very confused about it. With enough years, I found this is, just between us, we're all in this, because these things happen. Our current chair is a control freak, micromanagement guy. And so at first I was thinking, why is he all upset about my project? This seems good. And I found out over the years he doesn't like anything we do. So then all of a sudden, at a certain level, that's sort of, okay, that's just a factor, just like traffic coming to work. Or, in other words, it's not a personalized event, it's just a thing to deal with. We know how to deal with it. I'm more senior than he is, it's okay. So it's okay, but at first it was an unexpected, like closed door. Very bizarre. So anyway, I implemented it in fall 2015, continued with it in spring 16 when I taught the companion course. And this goes in, we have the 4-semester course and that other context. I kind of mentioned that. Results. Students like the reduced costs. Of course they did. Mm-hmm. However, some students equated the low cost with low value. Right? There's sort of that type of thing is don't underprice yourself. So maybe I should have arbitrarily made it $40 or $50 without changing it. And maybe there was not all students had that, but I did get that from students. On that, well, it's only less than $20. How important is it? So that was interesting. I found that some students didn't purchase the text, even though it's required. And since then, I've had one of my colleagues who's been teaching with the old text, and that's what my small text has been added, is with the expensive text, basically the same percentage. Also, that text is required, didn't buy it. Mm-hmm. So at first I was thinking, gosh, is it just my project that they didn't buy? No, it seems to be just the way it's done, what happens. So that's interesting. I also noticed, because this is not only is it required, but students should bring it to class every day so we can actually, when it's germane, everybody look at page 11 so I can talk about this thing. Some never brought it to class, even those who had bought it. Same way with my colleague who's using the old expensive text, the same thing happens. So that's a larger issue that we need to be addressed that we hadn't really checked on before. But it's not isolated to the project. So I was able to put it in another spot to be addressed in a different way. So that was useful information to me. Current status, there are 4 of us who teach this rotation of courses. 2 use my new text, 2 do not. Success or failure, we haven't run this enough times to get enough data. We've run it twice, and it seems to be, the price is certainly hands down a winner. Whether it's more, students use it more or less, it seems about the same. So I'm going to be teaching this again in fall, coming up fall. So I'll get, some more data as I pull the students through it, hopefully to see what's up with that. But right now I see it as far as success in the classroom as no better, but certainly no worse, but certainly less expensive. So I'm happy for that, but I was hoping for the glowing results in the other aspect. So I would say the jury's still out on that. There are some things that there was another cadre of team members last fall, and we discussed some of this, and I got some good input from that, which I'm actually implementing into not only the text, but my web support and what have you. So that's all useful. So what would I do if I was doing this now? Of course, and that's without fully understanding all the details of team versus TAP, right? But one thing I would spend more time, I do this sort of casually, more time researching the existing web resources, because every topic in my field that you want to find about is on the web, but you have to filter what's really a go-to place and what's kind of silly. And I do that casually, but I would do that if I was in the project now much more earnestly. And I may do that anyway. That might be a summer thing to spend some time on. And therefore, my course website to incorporate that more and contextualize more. Right now, I tend to say, here are some places you might go, but I haven't spent a lot of time contextualizing it. And again, I may do that anyway coming up. Again, note all of my material is available online already, but and then what's floating out there, it just needs better organization. And that's basically that. That's me. I'm available for questions. So there's my office phone, my campus email, and then my non-campus professional website, which is where I include my San Jose State course materials, because I have faster access to that website than the university website. The university website, I find faculty pages are hard to work with. Sorry, and I don't have time for it. And I can just. So I have my own independent website. I can deal with it, and my students know how to go there. We're fine. That's that. Comments, questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, so you authored this. It's not a
Yes.
cut and paste job. So,
Yes.
because yesterday we talked about one of the presenters had compiled a textbook by picking and choosing things out there. So this is
Yeah.
really totally
Yes.
structured the way you want to teach the
And the
course.
advantage of that is it eliminated all copyright issues. Everything, including the graphics, are my work, right? So it's easy to, the legal issues evaporate immediately when you're doing a compilation. So there was that.
So one question I have is, since there are a couple of you using this material, do the colleagues who teach from this, I know when somebody just handed me a syllabus very generously and said, here, you can use my syllabus, part of it feels just right, and part of it
Right.
is just not the way I teach,
Yeah.
or I don't have any clue what they were trying to accomplish. So in sharing these materials, do you find that there's a similar kind of?
Not so because this is more of a resource in expanded outline form. It's not a course syllabus that this is lesson 1, lesson 2. It's materials, and instructor X refer to it as you wish.
And then they just,
Yes.
as you were describing it.
Which
you
is what
took it
we've been
out,
doing.
yeah.
I can pass if anyone's interested. Which is what we tend to do anyway. Those of us who don't like the existing textbooks, we've been making our own assignments, our own exams, our own examples. Like we're talking about such and such and such, and the book says this example says no. This other Mozart example does it so much better, and I have it in my library anyway. Let's just use that. So we've been doing that forever anyway. We're used to doing that. We don't really need teaching materials. We have our materials at hand. So that's why in that package, we don't need the audio CDs. I have 500 CDs in my office that do what I need to do. I don't need the workbook, which is basically assignments. They're never assignments the way I would do them. And they're just as hard for me to grade because they're not with my thinking pattern. So I make my own assignments and my own exams, so like that workbook, we never use. So there's none of that's in here. That's for each instructor to come up with their own. And of course, we talk if we trade and information as need be, but
How complicated is it to make changes semester over semester? to
Very
it?
easy, very easy. The publisher is listed on there.
Is that Xanadu?
Xanadu, yeah, because I just send them PDF camera ready,
Okay.
right?
I don't-
And so, for example,
sure.
yeah, like, for example, for fall, I haven't officially ordered my textbooks yet, because I wait until I get my official course assignment. I'm scheduled to teach those, but in the past, they have changed.
Yeah.
So I wait, once the courses are announced, any week now, now they're April, I think fall courses will get announced quickly.
Mhm.
And then I go online and see, oh, okay, this is really what I'm teaching, and then I do
Okay.
my order. But any updates I can do even over the summer, because students wouldn't be buying it until the last part of August. And the bookstore, and I'll talk with the bookstore, say, when do you want to actually order this? I say, well, okay, it's easy to do, we'll order this July 1st, let's
Okay.
say, or whatever it is. Okay, that means I have to have all my updates done by July 1st.
Okay.
And it's very easy to do, you just upload and say, okay, these are
And that's-
replacement pages.
Okay, oh,
Because I don't have any embedded audio in this.
okay.
And the e-text version is just
Oh, right.
that. It's not, it doesn't have embedded anything. We could do that, but again, in class, we do all of that. And the examples I use in class are all from the standard literature that students can again, now you do a YouTube site, we're looking at Mozart Piano Concerto XYZ, YouTube, it's right there. So you don't really need the fancy embedded text. I mean, that's kind of nice, they're kind of cute, they're sexy, they look nice, but they're not really necessary to what we do, because we teach multimedia since forever. It's not all embedded in one spot, so that could be done. And maybe if I were doing this now, if that was like a goal, maybe that would be something I would do.
Why do you publish it through Xanadu or through whatever instead of just having a PDF and uploading the PDF and then they can print it if they want? I don't-
Yeah, let me think of why.
But you couldn't
You know
charge
what I
them
mean?
for it.
Yeah.
Right, and I think there was an issue, it's easier than doing, like, you could do like a course reader that gets published, and this was like, I think when we were doing the TAP program, Xanadu was like already involved, this is one way to do it, and it was very easy. I'm trying to think if there was more to it than that. Because basically, if I did a course reader and it was published, or, printed and available, whatever, it would cost X amount anyway. And I would get, as the author, would get whatever off that course reader anyway. I get
So-
like $2.
Do they
$1.50.
buy this through the bookstore?
bookstore.
Or through Amazon?
Bookstore, it's
or-
at the bookstore.
Okay.
So it's just like, for the course that's listed there, it's required it's right in the bookstore. And when they buy it, they get their own code for their individual e-copy.
And the $12
Yeah.
per student, I mean, you're
Yeah.
not gonna get rich off of it,
Yeah.
but does that go to your department or
No,
where does it go?
it's like any other publisher. The publisher has a contract with the author, and the author
Oh.
makes whatever they make. I think I make $1.50. So it's not, I'm not gonna quit my day job.
No, I'm just curious.
Yeah, so the rest of it does not, the department doesn't get it, Xanadu does, the publisher does it, the typical.
Was there a reason for doing that versus, does the school publish, I think you said course packs?
Our school doesn't. Our
Oh, they
department doesn't.
don't?
No, that's why.
Oh, I don't.
Yeah, they don't even do that, so.
Oh.
So departments that yours does? Or
When
some
I was in
departments do?
college, I had this sort
Yeah,
of thing for every class.
I see.
And it was published, I went to Cal Poly
Uh-huh,
for undergrad.
yeah,
And
that's cool.
That
I
was
see.
the kind of thing
Well,
we had.
no, see,
But they were
it-
published by the bookstore, so I had assumed that
Yeah,
that was.
yeah, and our department and our college
Okay.
doesn't do that at all, although that would have been something I would have considered.
Oh, yeah,
But
that's what I was curious.
Well, this reminds me of how we used to do it through the print shop, basically.
Right. Yeah,
So-
and so the print shops come and go, and this, they're always on the move. So again, the Xanadu thing, and for example, like, like Robert's bookstore used to,
Yeah.
when they were there, so those things have been sort of more in flux, and it just seemed like this is a little more stable, at least in the time
Okay.
being. Yeah. And also, it was associated with the TAP program, and it seemed like, it seemed like a rather effortless way to disseminate it. And it's just in the bookstore.
Well,
Yeah.
there's also the different, there's two issues. One is what's the form that the deliverable is going to take, or that the product you're creating is going to take. And the other is what benefit is there to being part of a cohort of people who are maybe from all over the university, but the common denominator is that they're trying to redo a class, and find their way through all these
Yeah.
different kinds of resources and how to compile them to save students money. So there's those two
Exactly.
components.
I'm also curious about, in your process, publishing of the process, did you have concern the accessibility issue? Is an ebook will be screen readable, or
Well,
how does that?
one of the reasons, this is like inside our own little, kind of offline. So yes, we consider that. B, at a certain level in our field, as a professional musician, no one's going to make a career in music with those issues. And so we address them when we're forced to, but it's really not, in other words, someone's going to be, an orchestra player, a professional arranger, whatever,
Yeah.
those various issues are going to not, they might get a degree from us, but they're not going to go into their field. So you can see like the difference between a department and a school. As a school of music, we're a professional program, we're training people for professional careers. That's just, whether they make it or not is their own business, but the idea of it's a vicious business, right? Where it's an awful business, right? The job prospects are terrible. How many concert pianists do we need? Not as many as we graduate, right? And you can expand that, So, for example, we had a student who was some years ago who was legally blind, a violinist, and we had to adapt all of our stuff. And he lasted 2 years at left. He said because he couldn't play in the orchestra. Because you can't follow the conductor. I mean, it's not like us being nasty about it, but it just doesn't work. You just can't do that in our field. You can in the pop fields, but that's not what we train. We're a classical program. So it's a. So the issue, but yes, it goes. But Xanadu checks. It is if it's, since it's an E version, and if somebody had some limited vision issues and they took it to our. Yeah, screen readers, it could be dealt with, and it could be read,
Okay.
if need be, but we haven't encountered the need for that.
Okay, yeah, I'm just kind of
Yeah,
curious,
sure.
the process, did
Yeah.
anybody check on that?
Yeah, I think Xanadu,
Check the box.
yes, it does. In the Xanadu publishing, that's part of the
Yeah.
process. Yeah. It's been a while, I remember that is part of the process.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you said originally you didn't particularly like the pack of all those
Yeah.
books. Do you think your teaching has changed as you've moved to having your own materials, or is it just kind of gradually morphed into where you are now? So.
I think it morphs in a way. The idea, I think part of it comes from and I talk with my colleagues who teach the theory courses as well. We tend to use those big textbooks as references anyway. We don't teach from the book.
Yeah.
We will often say, okay, for the next 4 weeks, we're dealing with chapters 7 through 9. Read those chapters, bring questions to class, and we never open the book.
Okay.
Because it's topics that we just know,
Yeah.
that we teach, the
Yeah.
topics, pivot modulation, well, we just teach that topic, and the book has its chapters. Well, there it is. So when you're at home, you can look at that. Well, I cover it in here in the same way.
Yeah.
And of course, with the web access, you could find so much of that. There's things from Princeton and Harvard, that look like that's probably been vetted at some level, as opposed to someone
Right.
just creating their own blog for fun,
Yeah.
but- Yeah, so I think it's morphed in general. A lot of it is, even when I first started teaching, a lot of the textbooks in my field are really, the collected lecture notes of
Right.
Professor X.
Yeah.
And it never fits anybody else,
Yeah.
And you're always going to say, okay, let's just ignore chapter 3. I want to start with chapter 6, then go back to chapter 2, because
Right.
that's how it makes sense to me. And so there's a bit of confusion anyway, and this big expensive book, we never have used all of it in any course I've ever taught, especially and as they get more expensive every year,
I get the
Yeah.
sense that you're really enjoying teaching from your own material this way now.
Well, yeah,
And you s-
I feel a little more honest,
Yeah.
because if I'm teaching from a $200 book and basically assigning 10% of it, I feel kind of slimy. I feel bad,
Yeah.
right? Or apologizing for the text.
Yeah.
This way, it's no harm, no foul, right? It
Yeah.
feels, it kind of takes that weight off. I feel better about that. Not saying it's the best document in the planet, but I feel, at that type of cost investment, you can't go wrong.
Right.
Do students compare, you know, there's 4 sections, 2 with the $12, 2 with the $200.
Everyone talks to, they all talk to each other.
Do they like
Yeah.
try to go for the $12 professor? Like, oh,
I haven't seen that. Mostly because it's sort of it's in a sequence. It's the first year students jump right into this track, so we kind of get them before they know what's going on.
they catch on. Oh, hi, Belet.
Right.
You
Or
know.
what time of day is it offered?
Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So I think they haven't figured that much out. At least I haven't heard. I should check.
It also sounds like your quizzes are different, because it would be nice
Yeah.
to do a comparison to see, you know,
Yeah.
are students still, you know, making sure that they get most out of
Yeah.
the class.
Well,
depending-
and I do, since I coordinate this, I meet with the other faculty who
Oh.
teach this. There's 2 of us are full-time and 2 are part-time, and we compare all this and that. Actually, what's really wonderful, because it's been actually accurate, if somebody fails the course and has to take it the next year, well, they invariably take it with a different professor.
Yeah.
Because we rotate.
Yes.
And then we compare, because I have to track all this stuff anyway.
Yeah.
It's, if someone, you know, got a D from me, they'll end up getting a D from the next person. So in other words, a D
Oh.
student is a self-regulating D student. And
Okay.
the A and B students get an A and B whether they do this or the other one. So
Okay.
that's been fairly, especially when someone retakes the class, because you do have to wonder, like, gosh,
Right.
was it me?
Mhm.
You know, what did I say? Did I have a bad year? Or, you know, and so we track what happens when they do a redo. And it's fairly, and if they pass it the second time, it's like, say somebody has a, in our school, a D is not a passing grade. It has to be a C or better. So if someone gets a D and they retake it, they might get a C. I've never seen a D to an A, because that would show that
Yeah.
either this person had this wonderful epiphany, or there's something that's us. It's usually been an incremental, and I've tracked this now for, 25 years. And it's,
What a rude shock, though, if you flunked it with you and then have to take it again, plus spend $200 on a
yeah.
textbook.
Yeah.
Well, this is why I was encouraging my colleagues to
Uh-huh.
all use this, but I can't insist.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
their
Right.
business. And some of this has just been the inertia of why change. I know what I'm doing with this other one. You know, there is that, and we all have. And that's okay.
So there's no particular comprehensive test the student have to take, say, I mean.
Across the section.
Right, across all the
Common
No,
sections.
no, it's really it's independent with each.
It's independent
Yeah.
of each.
However, what we have is, since it's a 4-semester
Mhm.
path, it's very clear, whoever's teaching it for each course, at the end, you need to come to here. These topics are covered,
Right.
and here's the
So
finish
you have a
line.
core curriculum.
Yeah, we have a very clear core curriculum.
Okay.
So that, let's say we have a transfer student, or a student, starts with, sequence with me, takes a year off, or does
Mhm.
whatever, and jumps into somebody else,
Uh-huh.
it'll still
It will,
work.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Then do you think it's necessary to do a kind of a control group testing, one using this versus the other one?
I don't know.
No.
I just don't know. I just haven't
Is
thought
it
of that.
worthwhile?
Yeah. It was, maybe, I haven't thought
How many students are in each section?
about it. 25 to 30.
Mm.
in
Just
that.
curious what, like, if you're talking
Yeah. no.
hundreds or.
No, it's what happened, it's largely a grading issue. It's impossible to do a standardized test after the first 2 weeks, because it's really it's solving problems. And the trouble with music, the good thing about music is the problem with music, and that is there's no preset guaranteed one right answer. At the end, when we listen to a piece of music, it works or it doesn't. You have there's a subjective as well as objective. So when we're dealing with certain things, there are, in a given problem to solve, there are, let's say, 20 possible right answers, right? And that's the low. As we get into the third semester, it's much higher than that. So everyone has to be graded individually. It takes me on average 20 to 30 minutes to grade one assignment for one student. And you already have, if you have 30 students, you already know where that is. And TAs don't work because they don't have the experience from those judgment calls. When I've had TAs, I end up spending as much work.
Right.
Hmm.
It doesn't work that way. So so much is contextual. There are some things that are really right or wrong because of this assignment, but after that, it's very contextual. And once you've made this decision, it opens up and closes the next group of decisions, and on and on and on and on and on and on. Yeah. So it's very hard. The grading issue is incredible. But it's the only way to do it right. I mean, I could do Scantrons and be done fast, and it would be a complete bogus course. I couldn't live with that.
Then are you saying that in the field of music, there's no objective standardized rubrics you can
Yes,
use?
absolutely.
Oh,
That's
okay.
absolutely true.
Yeah, because
Absolutely. I mean, for example, we go through various administrative flavors.
Yes.
And we've had things like we all teach private lessons. And for example, I teach composition, but my colleague who teaches voice. And at the end of the semester, he listens to his students, and they have the final exam, which is a performance. And the professor says, that's a B. And we've had directives come down, how many missed notes equals a B?
Right,
You
right.
can't say that. Missed notes aren't the issue.
Wow.
It's how they're missed and why and where they are. It's
Oh.
context. There's nothing objective in our field.
Then I could get flunked just because the professor didn't like my style, whatever.
Good, but we hope we hire people that don't do that. The only thing that's absolute is the harmonic overtone series, which is physics. The physics of music is real. And that's it. After that, it's 100, because it's all invented by humans. Nothing exists. 2 + 2 can equal anything we want it to equal. Right?
You've got the mathematician.
I object.
Because that's what composition is. There are goals, but there are not absolutes. I mean, I have colleagues around the country. A good friend over the hill in Santa Cruz, David Cope, has been spent his entire career writing algorithms to replicate Mozart. And it's complete crap. Because and I love him, so don't
Yeah.
it's all statistical analyses, and then create your own. But that doesn't, what comes out is Mozartian gobbledygook.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's not statistical analysis.
Well, there are probably other music classes where there are right or wrong answers. I mean, factual information about
History, yeah.
constructs
History.
or what a
Right.
concept
When
is
did
or
somebody,
what-
when someone was born and died? So history is
Yes.
probably it. But performance, nothing in performance.
Nothing in performance,
And then-
but sort of
but we're
the
basic-
vocabulary of
Yeah.
core concepts.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't necessarily be
That happens
germane to
very
that.
early.
Yeah.
Like I start out with the drawing of the ear and how we hear, and there are some, that's important. And we discuss the overtone series because that's everything. I mean, why does a clarinet sound the way it sounds? And it doesn't sound like a violin. It's the harmonic overtones of the instrument. And we need to know that. But after that, and there's some, like, here's some terms, basic terms, just because we've all decided to do this, it makes things faster. That's the first couple of pages, and after that, we just say, off we go. Let's see how this stuff's held together, when Mozart did it, when Brahms did it, when whoever. And then we try to replicate some of those strategies. Because we still play those musics, and it's important for students to understand how those musics are constructed, as well as more contemporary musics.